Spoiler warning, this video spoils all of Andor Season 2, as well as that a specific character does not appear in Rogue One. Hey nerds, what's up? If you've been around here for a while, you know it's no secret that I am obsessed with Andor, and I loved Season 2 so much that today I wanted to go through and kind of deep dive into Season 2 of Andor and why I thought it was so good, and really talk and explore some of the themes and character arcs that we got to discover during Season 2. And instead of my normal way of doing this, which is like breaking it down by character or theme, I really just want to go over some of my favorite moments from every episode and kind of watch them together or remind you of them together, and then comment on how or why I love those scenes so much. So a comment, a lot of these scenes will not have sound on. I might show small clips of sound and I might pause them. This is for copyright reasons. YouTube gets mad at you if you play long scenes, especially with sound. So I know that disappoints some of you, but hey, it's just a reason for you to go rewatch Andor. Without further ado, let's get into episode 1. So let's first start talking about the 1 year later. At first, that really stressed me out, and it happens multiple times in season 2. And I think normally I don't love that. Like, time jumps can just be really hard for me to deal with. I think it was an excellent choice in this show. In fact, I started noticing it particularly later on, like when we get to Gorman in particular. Like, the showrunners are aware that these things don't happen quickly, that these rebellions and these kind of simmering pots aren't going to happen fast. And I just absolutely love how they incorporated that and how it adds so much to the story they're trying to tell, and also helps accelerate some of the emotional and character beats that we end up having, because we recognize that a lot of time has passed, which makes it easier to, as a viewer, understand why relationships are where they are. That was a lot. Like, see, we've got a lot to cover, and I'm still on 1 year later, so it's great. The boardroom scenes were definitely some of my favorite scenes from the first little mini arc. I absolutely loved the Gorman plotline. Like, I think it was so good. I mean, that was basically most of the show, so good thing I loved it. But I love how subtle this scene is, how there's so much under the surface, and so much is having to be portrayed through less of like exactly what people are saying and more in subtleties. Like, you had to pay really good attention to kind of know, like, what is Dedra proposing? Oh, what are they trying to accomplish actually on Gorman? And what are they saying? What's the propaganda and what are they actually doing? And how is this fitting into her goals? I just really liked that part. So I'm actually here to defend all of the wedding stuff, because apparently some people found the wedding stuff drawn out and boring. Couldn't be me. I just liked all of the traditions and the settings and the costumes. It felt very Star Wars to me, like as I'm watching this, like back all of the rituals and stuff, and we'll get more of that in a later episode. I just liked it. Dedra and Karn's relationship is so weird. But I loved it. I really love the juxtaposition of Dedra and Karn, because I think this relationship shows something that Andor does really well in other ways too, which is the juxtaposition of big and small, like big conflict versus interpersonal conflict. So Dedra's like deep in the Empire. She's trying to do this stuff at work. There's like this whole story up there. And then she's also coming home to this relationship that is growing, and interpersonal relationships between Karn and his mother, which is like very low level drama. And the way that they juxtapose that a lot, particularly in these first episodes, I think is done really well. I mean, it's juxtaposed with the wedding as well, and with Bix and Cassian's relationship. Like, it's all over the place of big and small. And actually, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Oh no. He's like a major character, and his little like love in the fields, and how they justify is like, hey, yeah, like life is still being lived, and also this is happening. And I just think they do a good job. So probably one of my first favorite moments of the show is this conversation between Mon and her daughter, because that was one of the biggest character things for Mon in season 1, was like, she sold her daughter and she said she wouldn't. And so this moment is so important.
Nothing on the other side of that door matters. Not the guests, not the gifts, not the trouble that's gone into it. None of it matters. We can walk out there right now. Tell them all to have a lovely afternoon. But that it's not yet time for a marriage. And it will be remembered as an act of great bravery.
I wish you were drunk.
Yeah, it's showing again, like, everything Mon has given up. And I think at this point, it's really showing, like, that's it. Like, she's not going to really get her daughter back. She made that decision, and that's what she did. And it really leads to the breakdown at the end of the episode, which we will get to. Again, another scene I'm going to defend with my life. But other things to watch first. I realize in these first few episodes, I haven't talked a ton about Cassian's storyline. I do think it's like, I just don't have a lot to say about it. I think it was well done. But I will say I was so sad when he died. I really loved his character, and yeah, that was really sad. And I also think it's diabolical that Cassian didn't bring the robot back with him. That robot has been waiting for him this entire time, and you really are just going to tell me he is left behind. Wild loose end, which doesn't become loose at the end, but I was just like, Cassian, you didn't have like 2 seconds to go get the robot. I feel justice. And I can't even remember the robot's name, which makes me also diabolical, but here it is. So everything at the end of this episode is perfection, in my opinion. I love this wedding scene. I'm here to defend it because I guess some people think it went on too long, whatever. I thought it was boring. I think it is showing Mon's hopelessness and what she had to do and what she had to give up and how scared she is about the threat of the person who's going to give them up. And she wants to let go and just be free and for a moment not think about the stress of the rebellion and how much she's holding on to it. And the juxtaposition of the opulence between Mon's sacrifice versus the austerity of where Cassian and Bix are. Like, they're out here suffering for their lives, worried about immigration. And then Mon is like in this wealthy, like, everything, and how they are both giving up things, but in totally different ways. And again, that juxtaposition of like where the rebellion came from, I think is so brilliant at this end part. I also have this moment for Cinta and Vel for the same reason, because we don't even have a conversation here. They just look at each other, and then you see Vel like sad in a corner, and it's like, how is she feeling? It's clearly mixed emotions. There's all of this history there, but they don't need words. They're not explaining it to you. It's just like a fleeting moment, and we feel like we're really in it. And that, I think, is when Andor speaks the most. So here comes first, at the end of episode 3 is like the end of our first kind of like mini arc. And this is one of my complaints of season 2. Again, season 2, I guess I should have said this more in the beginning, like, excellent TV. I am so obsessed with it. I do have a few nitpicks about it, and I think this is the perfect time to talk about it. At the end of that arc, I'm defending this wedding scene a ton, right? I said I loved it. I love how she goes, just like going wild. I don't think it's addressed enough a year later. I think we get that year later, and then it's just kind of over, and I wish we had just seen like a little bit more understanding of how that was influencing Mon's character, and I don't think we got quite enough of it. Like, this letting go and this fear and this like wanting to just forget it all. It's so beautiful in that moment. Don't think it's quite addressed enough, and particularly like really bothers me that we never see Mon's daughter again. I just desperately, when we get to the final episode and we see kind of all those slices of life of where everyone is, we get to see her husband, that he's moved on. We never see, like, what is her daughter doing? Literally 20 seconds, 10 seconds, a flash of, like, does her daughter look happy, sad? Like, supposedly she never sees her daughter and husband again. She had to run. Cassian got her out. What does that mean for her and for her daughter? It's like, it just feels like slightly unfinished. So I'm like really surprised we didn't just get a flash of that. And that is a complaint for me. Okay, we're in episode 4 now. Here to share the very popular opinion that Karn's storyline is one of the best. He's one of the best characters. Actually, I love every character, but I do think they do such a good job with his character in this season. I like that his character is an interesting bridge between our villainous characters like Dedra and our kind of like heroic characters like Cassian. Dedra knows exactly what she's doing. She's upholding an evil system. And we see it at the end of season 1. And I know that Tony Gilroy, the creator, said he wanted to kind of pull you in to a lull. And like you get into her story like, oh man, girl power. Like she's just being put down at work. And then you're like, oh no, she's evil. Okay, she's torturing people. Cool. She knows what she's doing. And she is doing it for personal gain. She is doing it to make her own life better, and it doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Karn strikes me as the person instead who has actually fallen for the Empire's propaganda. He is like, well, of course, order is good, isn't it? Don't we want peace and order? And the Empire is saying that that is what they are doing. They're providing peace and order. And I'm just helping Dedra on Gorman. Like, what do you think? What do we think Karn thinks they're doing? Because it's very clear from later on when we get there that he and Dedra, and I mean, Dedra is like, you can't let him know what we're doing. And Karn thinks they're doing a good thing. So I really think he thinks like, we're stopping an insurrection. We are providing order and safety because he is the person who has bought into the propaganda. He believes it. And I just think it's really great about how he's like kind of like this more black and white thinker and why different people would maybe buy into that. It's a great way of propaganda. Okay, we got to move on. By the way, I want to say this now, but I remember at the end of this episode, my husband and I turned to each other and were like, oh, is this it? Is this when Bix is going to die? Because we're just like, well, we know Bix has to die. She's not in Rogue One. So what's going to happen to her? Luthen, man, another great character. This is the start of Luthen's story, this arc of how he hides information from people and he plays people off each other. So I think this is a good start of as we see that.
Toffee, Senate investiture. I absolutely adore this holiday. I know you want to talk about the politics of it all. I do. I want to talk parties, political parties.
So I wanted to play that scene because it's another super tiny detail, but it's just another example of how good they are at subtly displaying propaganda in the show without like telling you. They're never telling us that Karn is falling for the propaganda. It's just clear in his actions. We know Dedra doesn't fall for the propaganda. She just doesn't care. And then to have that, the way they talk about that on screen and like, oh, that's what people are watching and hearing. And the subtle propaganda of that, again, that's like those details is what makes this show so good. This was another scene that really stood out to me for some reason because I think, again, it does a good job of showing the different sides of radicalization. Andor is really good at showing the different kinds of people who are rebelling against oppression and who are upholding oppression, and that they're not all one and the same. And I think that's one of the most compelling things about the show. And so to see this part here where he's being radicalized, and again, I like that they have these scenes that, yeah, are serving our characters in small ways that don't necessarily have like a big deal after. It's not like, this becomes a big deal later. It's just like we're seeing this peek into who these people are as characters. So now we're moving on to episode 6. Valencinta. It's just so devastating, so emotional. Those two actresses did such a good job. Again, these like relationship moments, how everything is affected by the rebellion. And we have this really touching moment in this one between these two characters. But when they realize how they've let kind of Luthen tear them apart because Luthen only cares about the health of the rebellion and not about them. And how, okay, we're not going to let that happen again. And then, of course, no one can be happy. It's just so devastating. I honestly don't actually have anything to say about this scene. It's just one of my favorites. And I think I need to say that. The whole scene where Kleya is like trying to get her recording device out of there, and the way Mon is just going hardcore and just like saying exactly how she feels, and it's like such a tense moment.
Pleasant to see you free of the witness stand.
What a festive evening this has become.
I think it's great. We haven't talked about Kleya yet, but I found out in my last video, someone commented that this is her first role. Dude, she killed it. I love her. Not to make everyone sad, but we do need to watch this scene.
I'm not going to say remember this because I don't have to. This is on you now. This is like skin. You're taking her with you wherever you go for the rest of your useless life. Don't you look away from me.
I'm sorry.
She was a warrior. Everything that you have daydreamed about, whose loss will be mourned in ways that you will never understand.
Look, we talk about a lot of speeches in Andor. There's some amazing ones. I'm going to talk about an even more amazing one after this. I think Vel's speech is underrated. I think it's really simple and really fits the moment well and is very impactful. Watch this like 3 times and it still makes me a little emotional. It's great. Okay, I already know I said so much about Dedra and Karn, but again, like, just such a good thing as Karn starts realizing what's actually happening and the deterioration of their relationship. I could make a whole video about Karn, but again, we see here, like, these are the kind of people and like exploring why they might be upholding oppression. Why Karn is helping uphold oppression is because he truly believed in what they said they were doing. Whereas like Dedra is just for herself, right? Dedra is, I don't know, does she even care about the Empire? Or does she really just care about her own personal gain and promotion, which means aligning with the Empire is a no-brainer for her. She gets what they're doing. It's not like she doesn't. She gets it. She knows what they're doing. She's under no illusions, but she doesn't have a problem with it because she is power hungry, and so is going to follow power. I find the inclusion of this woman in the story very interesting, and I think it was a good choice. I do feel like Andor as a property really leaned away from the fantasy elements of Star Wars and very leaned into the sci-fi elements of Star Wars. And this is like really our only connection in Andor seasons 1 or 2 to the Force. If I recall correctly, maybe I'm forgetting something, but it's pretty strong. Like, right, she's got to be Force sensitive, and how Cassian doesn't buy into it, but Bix clearly does buy into it, and that becomes important later. I think it's interesting that Tony Gilroy chose to include this, and I'm glad he did, because I do think it makes some character motivations stronger, and I think it helps tie it in a little bit more to the Star Wars canon. I really don't need to talk about Karn anymore, but
I think there's a way out of this before things go too far. My people are convinced you're being coordinated by outside agitators. If I had something to offer, if we could lay this off on outsiders, then...
This is just a really good scene exemplifying everything I already said about the differences between the way he upholds the Empire and Dedra. It's like so innocent, right? In a lot of ways. So I actually put this moment on screen in my other Andor video because it's one of my favorite small moments where you just have to remember this guy. Like, they don't flashback or tell you, but he remembers Cassian. He remembers him under a different name, and he helps Cassian here. It's a very small moment. And I guess I'll talk about it here. I'll call it out later, but Andor's really good, again, at showing some of the people who upheld the rebellion in small, tiny ways. They weren't all Cassian and Bix and Luther and Mon Mothma. They weren't, and Kleya and everyone. I mean, I could list everyone. They weren't all these people doing it. Sometimes it was people just doing the smallest things, like not making sure Cassian isn't reported. Okay, that's really small. It was a small rebellion. And you see the woman in the very beginning, like in the first episode, how she helped Cassian. And you're going to see a couple other moments that I'll call out later. And I love how they show those small character moments. Like, small people also made a difference, even if they weren't doing the big things. And I've over-explained it now, but I like it. It's hard for me to say a favorite episode. Is episode 8 my favorite episode? Maybe. But one thing I love about this episode is how slowly it builds. It takes a really long time for the violence to break, and I timed it. I wrote some down. So the violence doesn't happen until 26 minutes in, is when the first violent moment happens. And the episode is like 42 minutes until credits roll. So more than half this episode is a buildup of tension, slowly into that first break. And I just think Andor has the courage to do that. Like, they will just take forever. And I remember when I was watching it, it felt like it was taking forever. Like, even 26 minutes seems like, wow, it was only 26 minutes till we got there, because the tension is just building and building. And you're like, when is it going to break? When is it going to break? When is it going to break? And the way that the patience of repeating so many scenes and showing the crowd again and showing everybody builds tension in the viewer to make you feel like you're a part of it. Just knowing that she was going to drop, I think it's just masterclass. I mean, I think really the moment everyone's going to call out in this episode is obviously the "who are you?" Karn's entire life has been for something so one-sided. He has so little time for that info to sink in this scene too. Like, he can't act on that info. He's gone. It's so little satisfaction. And it's just like, isn't that life?
Who are you?
Yeah. So much left unfinished. His relationship to Dedra, his relationship with his mom, he's just gone. And right as he was also coming to terms with maybe what was actually happening in the Empire. And we'll just never know. We'll never know how he would have turned. What would he have done? Would he still keep upholding the Empire? Would he have gone? Would he have gone to rebellion? I don't know. Some people, I don't think so. Like, what would he have done? What was step? And we just don't get to see it. And that, it's so unsatisfying in a satisfying way, if that makes sense. Like, it's a good ending in the show in terms of like, you feel it. It's such a gut punch. It really adds emotional weight, but it's hard. Okay, actually, this is maybe my favorite episode. This is all, episode 9 is going to all be about Mon's speech. 10 out of 10. Come on, it's brilliant. I got chills when I was watching it. So freaking good.
I believe we are in crisis.
The distance between what is said
Shut it down.
And what is known to be true has become an abyss.
Okay, we can't watch it all. But just excellent. This also has one of those moments I was talking about earlier, which is another small moment of rebellion when we get to see the two workers say that they fixed the problem so that they can't shut off Mon's speech, and then they look knowingly at each other. A small rebellion, but something that helped Mon's speech reach a wider audience. I also think this is just like a great drop of Emperor Palpatine's name. I think this is one of those like fan connections done right. I feel like any other show would have been like, we've got to show Emperor Palpatine sitting in his office mad and he's got to say something and we got to have a cameo. And I like that Andor's like, nah, we're just gonna drop his name. That's all you need. No cameos. Like, I just appreciate so much how uninterested they are in playing to fans in a way that Disney has tried a lot and in my personal opinion failed and been really cheesy at. They don't need to.
The loss of an objective reality is perhaps the most dangerous.
Sorry, I just keep getting distracted by watching it because it's I love it so much. This is another great moment in the show that I talk about a lot about Andor, which is like, because Andor chose to make a lot of gray characters and really explore the kind of like grittier sides of the rebellion, or maybe that's not the right word, but really like explore human character emotions and like very difficult choices, and that they are not shiny heroes. There can be this thing where it can feel too far away from Star Wars. And so I feel like when you have these moments like Mon's speech, where it is just so clearly good versus evil, and we're really seeing what evil looks like and what good looks like, and that there isn't a middle ground there, that yes, the people who got us to rebellion don't always make the right choices, but there is a right and a wrong. And this is one of those moments that makes you feel that way. Like, you can't come off this not feeling like heartened. And so I think they know just the right moments to include that, and they did that in season 1 as well with Cassian's mom's speech. So I appreciate that. This is also a masterclass in tension, because if you have seen, if you've seen the original Star Wars, you know Mon survives. If you've seen Rogue One, you know it's about Cassian. So you know both of these characters survive. They have to survive. So how do they keep the tension alive? This is an escape. Our characters are acting like they don't know if they're going to survive, and that they still keep the tension, because Andor knows that it's more important how our characters get there. They know how to frame it, that it's how they're going to escape and what's the collateral damage than if they live or die. And I just think they do that excellently. I also want to talk about one more thing in this episode, which is something I haven't seen anyone else talk about. And when I brought it up to a few of my friends, they have no idea what I'm talking about. So we're going to talk about it. It's a blink and you'll miss it. We have to go back a little bit. So there's a blink and you miss it moment during Mon's speech where you see Mon's driver listening to her speech and he has this look on his face. I'm going to I'm going to stop it here so we can see it. How do you interpret this look on his face? I'll just keep replaying it over and over like in a loop. Because when I first was watching this for the first time and I saw that brief moment, I thought, oh, is Mon's driver, who we know is an Empire plant, is he being swayed by Mon's speech? Because that's the look, what the look on his face reads to me. And then she gets out here and she's going and he gets out of the car to go to her, to find her. And in my opinion, it kind of seems like his body language and what he says is that he's thinking of like maybe helping Mon escape. But of course, Cassian asks Mon, is your driver safe? And she's like, no, I've known he's an Empire plant for a while. And Cassian just shoots him. And it's like, was this another moment, kind of like Karn, but on a smaller level, where here is someone who might have been turned, might have been realizing something, and then was given no opportunity to do it. Their life just ended. I'd love your opinions on this below. You tell me if I'm crazy and making this up or not. Okay, so I lied. Actually, that's not the last thing I'm talking about this episode because obviously Bix leaves, which is a huge thing. I got super emotional during this scene and it was so unexpected. I was convinced they were going to kill Bix because I knew she's not in Rogue One. And yeah, I was convinced. So the idea of them having her leave right now because she feels like Cassian's too important to the rebellion, brilliant. I love it. We'll talk more about her other motivations later, but at this moment, when we're watching this, we think the only motivation is that and that he wants to be with her too much. And honestly, great. So episode 10, I love that we find out exactly who gave them the information that we know about in Rogue One about Jyn Erso and the Death Star. And the scenes between these two have been good since season 1. I've called them out about kind of like the reluctance and the difficulty and how Luthen's like, this is your whole life. You're giving your life for this. You better buckle up. And he says that in season 1. And the symmetry of the ending, Luthen being the one to kill him. That is, it's like Luthen is going to do anything for the rebellion. And he says, I can't have the Empire tracking you down and knowing what you told us. So I have to end your life for the rebellion. Luthen's one of the most morally gray characters, in my opinion. And I love how they explore at the end of this season, like, the rebellion couldn't have been there without him, but also the distance that the rebellion wants to put between them and Luthen because of his actions. Again, just like such a complicated story, and it's not set up here, right? No one's explaining that. You just have to make the decisions on how they act and how you feel about it. But this was a brutal moment. Like, Luthen really embodies, especially in this scene, for the greater good. And everyone at some point, Cassian and Mon and Bix, have had their individual moments of having to do something for the greater good and give up stuff, but it's to much varying degrees. And Luthen is one of the ones who has probably gone the most extreme in that, and I think that's very interesting to explore. So what I love about when Dedra shows up here is at first you're not sure if she's just actually showing up because she's suspicious but doesn't have anything, or if she's showing up to get Luthen. And then she reveals that she's here because she knows. And it was in this moment I said, well, he's going to kill himself. I was 100% positive. I knew with 100% certainty that Luthen would not be taken. I mean, he would do the most he could to not be taken alive. And it's great character because I knew immediately he would give up everything for the rebellion. He's given up everything for the rebellion. His life is the rebellion. He will give up his life, clearly. And it's like, Dedra, of course, is going to come right in here. She's not going to expect that. How could she? She values her life and her own power and promotion above all else. That's all she's ever valued. She can't conceive or understand believing in a cause that much. She couldn't have expected that because she herself cannot understand loving a cause that much. Does she love the cause or does she love herself? I think she loves herself. Ultimately, I really liked this episode, seeing Kleya's and Luthen's backstory. I don't think we needed it. I think they made sense, but I think it added a lot of richness to the story. And Kleya kills it. She's awesome. I love how she goes and, protects the rebellion, but also gets a goodbye moment, and we get to kind of see what the rebellion meant to them. I think it's great. I don't have a ton to say about it, but I did really like it. I've seen a lot of people talk about this scene. I think it is a standout scene. Supposedly when he like pokes her, I don't know when it is here, but when he pokes her, that wasn't in the script. Even just the framing of the scene is so wonderful. Really like, oh, it's hitting the fan. Dedra finally, girl boss too close to the sun.
Supervisor Yoon spent 3 hours last night logged into your account. Now, shall we take a guess?
They just really show the intensity of the roles.
Luthen Rael.
Just one of my favorite scenes. I don't actually have a lot to say, so I guess we can move on. I just really love that Kleya says when Cassian shows up, of course it would be you. I just like that she knows that despite Cassian and Luthen's problems and how they went head to head, Cassian is the one that was going to come back for him and really understood that because she understands how important Luthen was to the rebellion, even as other people don't. Can we first talk about how much hair makes a difference? Because they changed Mon's hair and it totally changes how she looks. I love how they tried to just be so specific about it. Yeah. But I do love these council scenes and like the purity that's coming into the rebellion and Cassian having to be the one to stick up for Luthen. Like, they've had such an up and down relationship, as I said, and we've seen how much Luthen can hurt people. Like, we've seen it with Bix, and we've seen it with Cinta and Val, and we saw it with how intensely he did things that we probably didn't agree with, and his methods. But ultimately, he really was trying to stand for something, and he really was trying to get there. And ultimately, it was him who got that information about the Death Star. So, I like how they explore that. This scene was shockingly dark. I'm almost surprised like a Star Wars show has it. I mean, it's not graphic at all, but it is dark. I do think, though, it's such an interesting parallel because in the last couple episodes, we've had 2 people who have killed themselves. And it's totally different tonally and in circumstances. It's someone who died for what they believed in and died really thinking like, I have to do this to save the rebellion versus somebody who is like, I messed up and this is what's required of me because I hurt. I don't think I'm explaining this well, but I think there's an interesting change about how 2 sides of the same coin and why those people felt they needed to do that. Luthen to protect information and to protect this thing that he has been building his whole life versus Partogas, have I ever said that name out loud? Whatever, Velen guy, Dedra's boss, who is ending his life because his protege led to these plans getting leaked and to the rebellion being able to grow. Like, he disappointed his uppers. He's not dying to protect information. He's dying because he'll probably be killed anyway. And just how it's so different tonally, I think I'm glad they took the time to show this scene because I think it's very interesting thematically. I've said it before, but I really appreciate how they didn't just have everyone die because we don't see these people obviously in like A New Hope. We don't see them in the movie. So like you think a lot of them are going to die. And I appreciate that they just let some people live. And like, yeah, maybe we don't see them in the other movies, but it doesn't mean they weren't doing things to help the rebellion. Maybe they could be behind the scenes or they moved on in a different way. And I liked that. They don't need to account for everyone. I think I really like kind of where all the characters end up and the endings we see. I think it's satisfying. Again, I wish we got to see Mon's daughter. That feels really missing from this part for me. That was one of the biggest things she compromised for the rebellion and we don't get to see it. That's kind of one of my biggest complaints. So finally, let's talk about Bix being pregnant. So I normally hate this trope. When it first flashed on screen, I think like for a beat, I was like, what? She was pregnant? And then I was like, okay, actually, this is the one time where this really works for me. And I do have to talk a little bit about Rogue One. This is just the same spoiler I've already said a couple times in the video, which is like, we don't ever see Bix again. And I'm really curious, if you watched Andor before watching Rogue One, I'm curious how this moment was for you. Because for me, it was very, very different because I had seen Rogue One and I know that Bix is not in Rogue One. I've made that clear before. And because of that, seeing that scene really was emotional because I was like, Cassian will never know. And so this scene has this weird double thing of, first of all, this is why Bix left, because she knew Cassian would for sure leave the rebellion if he found out she was pregnant. And Bix truly believed the rebellion needed Cassian. And we know in Rogue One that is true, right? And so there's that moment where it was like, well, Bix was right. But on the other side, it's also like this hopeful thing of it's a baby that represents thematically always new life, rebirth, a new generation. And the idea that we never see them again, but that opportunity is there for a brighter future. Cassian is making a brighter future for his son or daughter. I think was actually a really beautiful way to end it. And it was so unexpected. You could have not paid me to guess that would be the closing shot of the show. But thematically, it ended up just working so well. And it also thematically goes back to that thing I talked about, which is what did people have to give up for the rebellion? And this last scene is Bix. She gave up, having the father in her child's life. She gave up this relationship. She gave up not being a single mom in a very tough environment. But she did it ultimately for the greater good. That was her sacrifice. That was quite unselfish. And it's kind of a reminder of all of these other things people had to give up of varying degrees. And again, but that final shot being what she gave up, though, being so hopeful. Chef's kiss. Okay, I think we've talked about Andor Season 2 enough. Ironically, you're going to be like, but you missed this scene. I know. Everything was perfect. It was wonderful. I could have talked all day about it, but I wanted to just talk about some of those major thematic elements I really liked. Yeah, so like super few flaws for me. One of the big ones was just Mon's daughter. I think I already mentioned, and like that wedding scene not end up having enough effect on other things. And I think that happened a couple times in the show where a character had a big emotional moment and then we didn't quite see enough of it like a year later. But it was a pretty perfect season. I love it. I highly recommend you going right into Rogue One if you haven't. Again, I would love thoughts on people who watched Andor before Rogue One because I do think it changes the experience a little bit, neither good or bad. I do desperately, after watching Andor and then going straight and rewatching Rogue One, like, wouldn't it have been great if the events of Rogue One were just Andor Season 3? Imagine if we got Rogue One in 12 episodes. Wouldn't that be amazing? As it stands now, I just want to talk a little bit about Rogue One. Rogue One feels so fast-paced and so plot-heavy compared to Andor that it is a little bit of a whiplash. I really liked Rogue One when I first saw it. Do I think it pales in comparison to Andor now that I'm rewatching it? Yes. Do I still think it's really good? Yes. I totally enjoyed my time watching Rogue One again. I was like, oh yeah, this is a great movie. But it's just like compared to how slow and thoughtful and theme heavy Andor is, you do just get so much more of the plot in Rogue One. I'm interested to hear how you guys think about that. Obviously, Andor wouldn't have existed if not for Rogue One, so I can't be sad about it. But just imagine if we got some more episodes. That would be awesome. One thing I did love about watching Rogue One is everything Cassian says has so much more weight. And I do think that's so cool when someone can make, like, it's seamless, right? Season 1 goes into Season 2, goes into Rogue One, goes into A New Hope so seamlessly. And I think that is so impressive that Tony Gilroy did that because Andor goes seamlessly into Rogue One. Cassian's character is so consistent. I just wasn't expecting to really see the Cassian of the show Andor in Rogue One, and it was like dead on. all of his journey felt accurate to the screen. And I think that is incredibly impressive since Rogue One was created first. So if you watched Andor and you're like, well, I don't want to watch Rogue One, I highly recommend you do. I think it's a great completion little arc there. But yes, in the comments, please tell me your favorite parts of Andor. Please tell me some of your favorite themes, what you liked about it. Tell me what you thought about Rogue One. Tell me if you watched Andor before Rogue One, how that Bix ending worked or didn't work for you, like how different that was, and were you surprised not to see her in Rogue One? I'd love to hear about it. And as always, if you like these kind of deep dives, please like and subscribe. That's the best way to support me. And if you want to see what I'm currently reading as well as other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. I'll see you next time.